Hello, and welcome to the WWIA podcast. We're honored to have you join us in our mission to bring honor, connection, and healing to America's combat wounded Purple Heart heroes. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, we welcome you. If you're a returning listener, thanks for coming back. Please be sure to tell others about our podcast and leave us a review if you're enjoying what you're hearing. We have an exceptional episode for you today as WWIA Founder and CEO John McDaniel welcomes a close friend and a true American Patriot to the podcast, General Douglas Crissman. Doug is a West Point graduate, having served more than 33 years in the Army, retiring as a Major General in 2021. Doug earned a master's degree in systems engineering from the University of Virginia, taught on the faculty at West Point, served 2 tours in the Pentagon, and was the senior U.S. Army officer assigned to the British Army. An Eagle Scout, former Scoutmaster, and avid outdoorsman, Doug enjoys hunting, hiking, and backpacking, and recently completed several hundred miles on the Appalachian Trail. Since retiring from the Army, Doug divides his time and energy between helping to raise the next generation of Army leaders as an Army senior mentor, providing corporate leadership development to Fortune 500 companies as a senior advisor with Thayer Leadership, strategic advising as an independent consultant, and sharing his passion for the outdoors as an assistant manager for an outdoor gear store in Northern Virginia, where he now resides. Although a recent member of the WWIA Board of Directors, he's been involved with the growth and development of the foundation since its inception in 2007, and looks forward to helping guide its continued progression to honor, connect, and heal our nation's combat wounded Purple Heart recipients. Let's jump into the conversation with John and Doug now.
Hi, I'm John McDaniel, founder and CEO of the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation, and this is our podcast, Honor, Connect, and Heal. Today is a very special day for me. It's the 19th of January. I don't know when you're listening to this, but 19 January 24. And I have with me one of my dearest friends, somebody that I've known for, I will get to that, but I'm gonna say it's probably 32 years. 30, because Douglas is giving me the 32. So yeah, 32 years. Douglas Crissman, Douglas C. Crissman, who is a retired Major General in the United States Army. And like I said, we've known each other for 32 years, and we're just going to chat. We're actually in my house right here in Apollo Beach. Doug just arrived. He's been on business in Orlando, and he showed up late this morning, and so we've just been hanging out, getting reacquainted. But welcome to the program, Doug. It's an honor to have you here. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you as well, John. It's great to be here in sunny Florida while snow is falling through most of the United States, including my home.
Yeah, Doug showed me a photograph from his wife, Carolyn, who used to work for the foundation. Wonderful, delightful woman. She sent Doug a photo of their house, and there's like 4 feet of snow in their driveway. So we don't have that going on here, but yeah. So I want to just set the backdrop here. I'll just introduce it a little bit, and then I'll turn the steering wheel over to Doug to fill in some of the blanks. But my first memory, by the way, Doug's on our board of directors. He's a retired Major General. He's commanded at all levels in the Army, just shy of the division level. So that means brigade, battalion, several companies, multiple platoons, et cetera, a combat veteran. How many combat tours do you have, Doug?
I guess you could say 4. So 3 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
that would be considered combat tours.
Yeah. Master parachutist, all the scary stuff on your uniform that you could imagine. A career infantry officer who made it to the rank of Major General. That's 2-star general, for those that are keeping track or don't know. But yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment what you've done. But let's go back to the time that we first met. So my recollection of that was that we met at the infantry officer advanced course at Fort Benning. Would you say that was like what, 92 time frame? And we were in the same small group. There's maybe 10, 12 cats in that class. And as you know, that was our small group, but the overall number of students in that, I always say, well, I thought it was 200 or 300. I don't know if it was that many or not.
Yeah, I think it was more like 130, 140,
okay.
but
in that particular class, yeah. But anyway, that class, the class of 80, you were 88 guy, I was 87 guy. You were below the zone, so you ended up, you know, I think joining my year group or something like that. Below the zone means he was promoted ahead of his peers, which makes a lot of sense because you're an amazingly talented individual. But I remember meeting you for the first time, and I remember, and Tom Cleary was our small group instructor. Most of us were really young captains, and we were getting ready to command. And this course is about a year long, where you're learning the finer art, hopefully, of how to be a company commander, and get your first command, and that's the big thing in the Army and the infantry, is to command troops. And we were in the same small group, and I remember looking around the class, first day and a week as you're trying to figure out who's who in the zoo, and I'm like, that guy right there is switched on. That guy's switched on. That guy. Okay, so there's 3 dudes in my assessment, and that maybe 4 if you stretched it, that I thought were really, superior officers, people that I admired and wanted to get to know, and you were one of them for certain. And Dixon Gunther was also in that class. We're all still lifetime friends. But what was your recollection of that first time?
So, similar, there we are, all just finished being lieutenants. We're all brand new baby captains. We show up, and literally everybody's come from all corners of the globe, and we've done different things, but now there's this leveling activity. But you can't help, based on kind of who we are and how we're programmed, to sort of be looking to your left and looking to your right at what the competition is and
right.
who's who. And so I remember those days as well, and I remember looking at John as part of our small group, the team that you're going to spend a lot of time with for the course. And I remember thinking, like, there's a peer who I want to lock arms with. There's a peer who is going to make me better through this experience, and a lot of self-development is a result of the people you're surrounding yourself with, mm-hmm. and the rest of the student body that helps make you better, mm-hmm. As you address the course requirements. So that's kind of my feeling, and frankly, it was you and Dixon that were the folks I looked at in our small group and said, okay, like there's my teammates.
Yep. Same. And we lived. Funny thing is that we lived at Whisperwood, as I remember.
We did.
In Georgia. This is Fort Benning, Georgia.
Across the parking lot.
We were right across the parking lot. And and I remember that you have a son and a daughter, and Garrett and Haley. And Garrett, I think, was born first, right? And I remember
while we were there.
While we were there.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'll tell you, I got a good story for you. So, a lot of the guys, I would say half, maybe 50% or so were married, and what age were we, would you say?
So we were, 4 years in the Army, so we were probably, 26, 27?
26, 27, yeah, okay. So, young men, and I remember about half the population being married, and at the time I was like, married, that's not even on my radar. I had enough trouble. I figured I have enough trouble just keeping track of myself. Like I knew that I need to be able to take all possible energy that I have and focus it on doing well in this course and getting through it and all that. And I just thought, wow, having a marriage to manage and do all that was just really literally beyond me. I was like, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could give the right amount of energy to being a military officer and devote my life to a woman and be married and have a family at that stage of my life. And here's you, like, I remember with this baby, and I was just like looking at, like he's scoring higher on all the tests, the PT test, all the scores. I mean, you're doing better than me on everything. And he has a child. And I remember we had this big problem. It was a tactical exercise without troops. They call it a toot. And we were supposed to like brief our solution set, and we're out at the mount site. And you had told me like that day, you're like, dude, Garrett was up all night long, he's sick, and I got no sleep, and you could just look at you and you're like, man, that guy's looking rough, and here I was all, Peter Cottontail ready to rock and roll, and you got up and did your thing with your, terrain board and how you were going to attack this problem, and you did it like flawlessly, and I'm like, yeah, well, that guy's clearly got something that I don't have. But, I really always admired you because you always say, Doug's the guy that always has the right answer. It's not 52, it's like 52.65, and I'm like, I just knew that it was around 50, whatever the answer was. But anyway, so you had Garrett and then Haley, and then, so let me ask you because I don't remember. I mean, if you put my feet to the fire, I reckon I could get it right. But you left the advanced course, okay, and then you went on to go command. Where did you go? Was it Germany?
No, I went to the 82nd at Fort Bragg.
Oh, I thought you went to 80. I thought you were at the 82nd before. You were mech before. You were 4ID.
Yeah.
As a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so the advanced course, and then 82nd.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. And your dad is a retired military officer.
Yes.
82nd guy.
No. Fort Bragg, but not 82nd. Never served in 82nd.
Okay.
Was in
West Point officer.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. Doug is a West Point officer, and for those that don't know, it's one of the, it's probably the finest, if not the one of the top, 3 to 5. Higher education institutes on the planet. You go to West Point, first off, it's almost impossible to get into it. But if you do get into the academy, you end up, then upon graduation, I think you guys owe your service obligation 5 at that point?
At that point, it was 5 years. It's a little different now. They've got some different contracts that you can enter into, different paths. But yeah, it was 5 years back then.
5 years. And so, all right, so you you do your lieutenant time, you go to the advanced course, we meet, you go off to the 82nd to command. And you command at the 82nd.
Yep.
And that obviously goes well for you. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then did you get a second company command?
No, I didn't. I left after a single company command, had 2 years of that in a rifle company, and then went to grad school at University of Virginia, and then had the opportunity to go teach at West Point for a couple of years, and then we met up again at Fort Leavenworth for CGSC.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's right. Kind of when our paths actually collided again. Was 99, 2000.
Yeah, that's
Fort
right.
Leavenworth.
Well, let me So we had a lot of common space and a lot of common terrain that we've traversed together, but. Let me ask. Let's talk about company command for just a second, because we got a lot to talk about. But I'm really interested in your thoughts. Okay, you commanded. That's the highest level I ever commanded. Okay, I did 2 company commands, both airborne, Charlie 1501, and then the division long range surveillance detachment. So I have what is that like? The commands back then were. Are they a year or 2? Year and a half?
I would say if you got a second command, sometimes they pull you out at 12, but often you 18 months each or so.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I was. I know I was probably pretty close to 3 years total in command. Between the 2, I reckon. And I could talk for days about leading. Commanding a company. And I remember back then. The Army kind of dangled that in front of us like, hey, this is the biscuit, man. If you do well here in command at the company level, that's going to make or break your career. Like, I think that's pretty true, isn't it?
I think it's the first real test of one's leadership ability. I mean, you lead as a platoon leader, you lead really as a staff officer.
Right.
You know, so hopefully if you're doing well, you're leading in everything that you're doing. But you know, company command is the first real crucible of leadership in the Army, and if you do well there, then it allows you to continue to do well as a major, again, as a staff officer, but an important one. And if you put those two opportunities together and you do well with them, then you know, those are the folks who get a chance to hopefully command again later on at the battalion level.
Yeah. So the 82nd Airborne, and I'm sure a lot of folks that are listening to this go, yeah, I've heard of that, or I know that, or I served there. I was never an 82nd guy, but I had lots of folks that I know, you know, haven't come and gone in and out of the airborne community myself. But that was I remember guys going to 82nd Airborne out of the advanced course were like, yeah, that was probably outside of maybe the Rangers, you know, and you couldn't go from the advanced course to the Ranger regiment. You had to go command someplace first and then go to and volunteer and be accepted back or to the Rangers to command there as a second command. But the 82nd clearly was like the one spot that, I mean, I was just going to say it, all the best officers went. You know, I mean, you couldn't like just, I don't know how that happened for you. I mean, did you just tell somebody, hey, I want to go to the 82nd, or they told you you're going to the 82nd? I mean, how'd that work? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know, you know, back then we were still balancing sort of time in light units versus time in heavy units. And
that's
so
right.
Light units being, you know, airborne, air assault, and straight light infantry, and then heavy units being those that operate in mechanized vehicles, the Bradley fighting vehicle, or back then, you know, the M113. And, you know, fortunately, I was in a good position because I'd been to a heavy unit out at Fort Carson, Colorado, in 4th Infantry Division as a lieutenant, and therefore was in a position to at least raise my hand and say, I'd like to go to a light assignment now. And my first choice is, and, you know, it worked out. Doesn't, you know, it doesn't always work out, as we know, but, you know, sometimes the planets align and you get a chance to go to the place that you'd most like to go. So, you know, but folks who had just left the 82nd or folks who had been in another light unit as lieutenants didn't have the same ability to ask to go to the 82nd. So I was in a good position to be able to ask for it.
So set the stage for us, man. I mean, this is, what time frame is this that you're commanding? This is like 90.
So this was, well, you and I both spent some time on division staffs immediately after the advanced course. So upon arrival in our respective units, so I spent over a year in the division headquarters,
chewing glass and juggling chainsaws.
You know, just, you know, the only thing worse than being a captain on a division staff is being a major on a division staff, which I got a chance to do later on. But brutal. So spent over a year waiting in line to earn the opportunity to go down.
And you better perform. Because if you don't perform on that division staff, you're not getting a company, or if you do get a company, you know, I don't know. I mean, I knew guys, we both knew guys, but they're looking at you. It's like paying penance, right? I mean, you're going to pay your dues, earn your stripes. They're going to send you to the division staff, or some staff usually. You know, you're going to do some staff time before you command at whatever division you're at. We both did it. And Dixon used to say, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it was Dixon, had to be. He was like, you know, because we both worked in the G3 at 6th ID as battle captains, and it was brutal, man. But he used to say it was like juggling chainsaws and glass balls. It was just a matter of time before something shattered or you lost a limb.
Yeah, well, you know, and I did 15 months in the G3 of the 82nd.
Brutal.
And, you know, ran the division's assault CP, ran the division's EG program, and was a battle captain in the division tactical.
Yeah, that's what we did.
TAC CP. And you know, those were all great jobs looking back, but in execution, day to day, you were just like, oh my goodness, when will this end? And when do I get my, you know, my reward, my penance to go down and actually serve in one of these great battalions and you know, get a chance to lead a company. But fortunately, you know, that happened after 15 long months, and I ended up taking command of a rifle company of paratroopers 10 days before I loaded up that same group, 104 of them on this particular day, and flew along with a whole bunch of other people towards Haiti when we were going to do the airborne invasion of Haiti and
so you actually went green ramp, loaded up and then took off.
Yeah, so I was in
magazines loaded and all that.
Yep, and I was in there were 62 C-130s that left from Pope Air Force Base.
62.
The
division was jumping in.
The 8 of the 9 infantry battalions were involved. 2 different drop zones. 4 battalions on.
Going to jump into Haiti.
We're going to jump into Port-au-Prince International Airport with 4, and then there were I think an additional 3 or going in a different drop zone. And so anyway, it was to be a big operation, and of course, as everyone, many will remember, the whole invasion, the airborne invasion of Haiti became unnecessary because Colin Powell ended up brokering a last-minute deal. I think it was Colin Powell and former President Jimmy Carter ended up talking Raul Cedras and other key leaders off of the ledge there at the last minute.
Probably showed him a photograph of an image.
Oh, they basically said, "Hey, the 82nd has taken off."
Yeah.
And they are in the air right now.
And when they land, they're not.
You can stop this now, and we can all go home, and or this won't end well for you.
Right.
And so we turned around somewhere over Key West, and we're told, "Hey, stand by. We might have to re-execute this tomorrow if they renege on whatever they agreed to." And that was 10 days into company command for me. So
wow,
it was a great way to start, or interesting way to take over your unit.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I vaguely remember that. It was a long time ago. But I guess I knew that you would. I knew that you guys went green ramp. I just I appreciate you refreshing my memory on that. This is what I wanted to ask you about command, because we'll fast forward here in a second to commanding at the battalion and then the brigade level, because there are people, I'm sure, listening to this that don't really have an understanding of what that means, but at the company level, it's plus or minus about 120, would you say, 120, 25, something like that, paratroopers or soldiers that you're in charge of. And as a company commander, you have what they call UCMJ authority. That's Uniform Code of Military Justice. So, like, you can take their rank if they screw something up bad enough. You can take their money. You can give them extra duty. There's all kinds of things that you can do as a company commander that is essentially like punishment, right? But you have that authority. It's a real authority, and the soldiers know that. They do know that. But that's kind of a unique thing. But we're all probably the advanced course prepared us to command. But when you're in command, you're faced with all kinds of things that you're just not prepared for. Like it's not in the book. You would have never thought this was going to happen. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but here's what I'd like you to discuss for a minute. But if you had to say one thing about command, that challenged you the most, just in general terms, and maybe start back, as a captain, because then I'm going to ask you, to fast forward to the brigade level, because at the brigade level, you're commanding, what is it, like 720 or no
battalion
720. But the brigade was what?
Depending on the size of your brigade and whatever else you might have, about 4,000.
Okay, commanding 4,000 troops. Wow, yeah, which is a lot different than 125. Okay, that's my point, right? So just about, I know it's probably stretching your memory banks a little bit, but what was the biggest challenge you found in command? Something that you look back on and you go, I was ill prepared for that. I didn't see that coming. I didn't think that was going to be so hard. Anything come to mind?
Well, I think first of all, the size and scope of a company really sort of dictates that you are spending 80% of your time probably on what I would call direct leadership, meaning just, hey, look, follow me, do as I do, and I'm walking point. You're not, as a company commander, walking point, but you are very much a visible,
accessible and visible
example of what you want everybody to be doing. Literally, like the direction you're moving, the way you present yourself in your uniform, the way you are able to demonstrate mastery of a certain set of skills. As a company commander, there's very little difference between the skills that you got to master and the skills of the rest of the 120 people who you are leading, and therefore there's very little distance between them and you, and that's the space of direct leadership. And so, what do I remember about that? If I were to replay, if I were to replay that, I would say, it's about communicating with clarity, and coming up with those 2 or 3 things that you are really trying to get done in any given week or month, and say, look, the Army's only going to allow me to lease this company. You don't get to buy it. You don't even get to rent it with an option to buy. It's the Army's company, and you are privileged to lease it for 18 months, maybe. And therefore, you got to pick 2 or 3 things that you want to get done this month, and 2 or 3 things you want to get done next month. And you got to communicate with clarity how you want to get those things done. And then it's about, direct leadership, troop leading procedures, and just, having the persistence and the peace of mind and the ability to kind of read the room. And by read the room, I mean, you got humans, and you got to play the cards you're dealt. And every company is not created equal, and it comes with a set of leaders that you inherit, and they are your enablers to help achieve your vision, which, oh, by the way, is someone else's vision, which you just have a piece of. And you have to be able to figure out how to deal the cards you're dealt to achieve those effects. And I will say, I probably didn't get that. I probably got that wrong as much as I got it right. And it's very much, command and direct leadership is very much a human endeavor. And it's about, in the end, it's about imposing your will on an organization but your will is generally informed by, the guidance and the example of whoever you're working for, and that vision that you're trying to help them realize, and how you communicate that why to inform and fuel the motivation of the team. That's basically just saying, okay, boss, where are we going today? What do you need us to do, and why? Everybody, I think, performs a little bit better if they understand the why. So, I don't know, that's a long answer to your question.
All right. So, here's what I want to know now. Because I don't have the experience of commanding a battalion or much less a brigade. I was doing other things that weren't like that, sort of, kind of. But if you had to look at your time as a captain and that command experience, and then fast forward, I'm going to skip right over the battalion for a moment, but go right to the brigade as a colonel, full colonel, commanding 4,000 troops in combat. Those 2 scenarios, captain to colonel, 124 paratroopers to a brigade size combat unit of 4,000 plus troops. I mean, they're dramatically different. The leadership, the leadership that you have to bring to bear, versus the direct leadership. Hey, follow me, do as I do. I'm the example. There's still some of that, clearly at the brigade level, and certainly more so at the battalion level. But just tell us about that experience as a brigade commander in combat. What does that leadership picture look like? You were the last, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you were the last brigade combat team out of Iraq, right? The first time.
Yep, 2011.
2011. Okay. Lots of experience there. You performed obviously very well. You would have never made general officer. But what's that like? What is that leadership experience like at the brigade level in a combat team compared to, a company commander? I mean, I know there's a big gap there, and I don't want to press you with a hard question, but that one right there to me is like, I don't have the experience, but you do. So tell us about that difference in the leadership that you have to produce and bring to bear on the brigade combat team versus what you had to do as a company commander, to give our listening audience a kind of a perspective on all of that.
Oh, it's a great question, and I would try to capture that by saying it's the art at the brigade level or any large organization. It's the art of indirect leadership at that point. You still have to know what right looks like, and you still have to have demonstrated competency and mastery of many of the skills for which your brigade is now responsible for. And your ability to have that level of competence, and occasionally, when necessary, demonstrate that you understand the tools of your trade and committed those tasks and conditions and standards to memory as a company level commander when you were a direct leader. Mm-hmm. But the Army needs you to do that less as a brigade commander. In fact, as a brigade commander, what they need you to do is manage the resources that all those other companies, inside of my brigade, I had 36 companies. And those 36 companies...
Meaning 36 different company commanders.
36 different company commanders like I was when I was a captain.
Right.
So 36 different
Which
captains.
Is way out of your span of control. Right. Your span of control is still 3 to 5, right?
And so there's a battalion commander in between me and them.
Yep.
And so I am at that level. The Army doesn't want me to be micromanaging 36 companies.
No.
Even though I, feel like I was a pretty decent company commander and, could go and take over their job if I needed to. But that's not what the Army needed me to do. What the Army needed me to do was figure out how to assess, measure, and decide the optimal allocation of resources to enable the success of those 36 companies inside of 6, sometimes 7 battalions. And that took a leader who'd been around the block enough and had led at those levels and had enough experience to kind of say, okay, look, I'm the one who sits at this level and helps ensure the success of all these subordinate organizations. Mm-hmm. These are the things I'm looking for. These are the signs I'm watching for. These are the indicators that all is not well at this level. Here's how I know. Here's how I can sense that. Mm-hmm. And here's what I'm going to do about it. And here's how I can mitigate that risk that I'm seeing in this organization. And here's how maybe I just have a coaching conversation with the leader in between me and that company that I see maybe struggling. And maybe all I need to say is, 3 sentences to that leader, and he or she picks it up and sort of says, okay, yep, got it. I missed that sign, boss, but I got it now. I'm on it. And problem solved. But perhaps left unnoticed or uncorrected, we might have had a bigger issue. So, many people are successful at being wonderful direct leaders when direct leadership is what their job requires. Mm-hmm. Many of those successful direct leaders can then be also successful when the majority of their job requires proficiency at indirect leadership. But some can't.
Yeah.
You talk about that great NCO who was incredible as a platoon sergeant, also excellent as a first sergeant, but when the Army made him a sergeant major, like he just couldn't make that leap to the indirect type of leadership and influence and resourcing that
they call that the Peter principle, right? Isn't that the Peter principle? That every individual in every hierarchy will have has a tendency to rise to their level of incompetence.
Yeah.
Well, it goes both ways. It's not just the NCOs. Obviously, there's a lot of officers that fits that or individuals not even in the military. But okay. Yeah. So let me ask you, this, on your military, career, and then we'll move on, because the reality is that you and I have been hunting buddies for as long as we've known each other. You're an avid sportsman. You're on the board of directors for the foundation, and we got a lot to talk about there. I think that's obviously that's a bond that we share and enjoy together. But you get promoted to general officer, right? I mean, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that makes sense. Obviously very, very proud of your accomplishment there and your service to our nation. But for everybody else out there, man, what's it like to be a general officer? What's that like?
I mean, first of all, it's just a great, it's a great honor and a humbling opportunity, and one that certainly no one plans on. You just sort of are doing the right thing. At least that was my approach. Was, hey, you take one job and one promotion at a time, and think about what you think might be next. But you're not thinking 12 moves down the road. You're just thinking about, hey, look, I want to command this company to the best of my ability. And then, if that allows me to become a major one day and then do that job as well as I can, well, then great, but yeah, I was as surprised as the next guy. They say 1% of our officer corps gets a chance one day to be promoted to general. And so because there's so much talent in that, in that group, and there's so much of life and reality and luck and circumstance that is part of the equation. I recognize that when the list of names came out for my year for promotion to brigadier general, and there were somewhere between 35 and 40 names on it. We pick the Army picks about 35 or 40 people a year to be promoted to brigadier general in the active component. And I knew that for every name on that list of 35 or 40, there were 4 other names on there whose files were just as good, whose capabilities, background, experience, reputation was just as good. So for the 35 or 40 that we picked, the Army's got 200 others that if we put all those people on a bus and somehow that bus, got hit on the way to their promotion ceremony, there'd be 35 more standing in the door ready to step in who are just as good.
What's it like to put on a star on your hat, on your cap or your beret for the first time and walk around on a military installation? That's got to be pretty cool, right?
It's just a bit surreal because
did people treat you different? Did you get treated different? You had to, right?
Well, yeah. You absolutely did, because there's you talk about a division of 20,000 soldiers, 16 to 20,000 soldiers in an active duty Army division. There's 3 generals, and there's 20,000 soldiers running around. Right, so just the fact that you are now one of them, right, and you're one of these people that you typically thought of as a picture on the wall, or somebody's. The flag that flew in front of a headquarters and somebody told you who that flag belonged to.
Right.
But you just, the fact that now all of a sudden you are that person. There was certainly a bit of surreal feeling, but I think, most of us, myself included, just tried to say, okay, hey, look, we still put our pants on one leg at a time like everybody else. I'm no different today than I was when I was a colonel, than I was when I was a major. Yeah, we got a lot more experience. Yeah, we've covered a lot more ground and chewed a lot more glass that has prepared us for this enterprise level leadership experience now, and the Army's asking a lot more of us. But we were cautioned, at least I was, we are all a product of our experience, and we're all, as leaders, I was fortunate to be developed by a lot of great a lot of great leaders that kept me from doing stupid things, or when I did do stupid things, told me the errors of my ways and set me back on the right course, and modeled professional and appropriate and competent behavior. And I kind of was like, okay, well, that's what right looks like. And, if you're a colonel, then you'll be doing stuff like that colonel, because he's got his stuff squared away. You know, if you ever get a chance to be a general, like that's what they do. And that general just had a huge impact on you. Okay, how did they do it? What did it feel like? Okay, now you are that person. Use your rank for good. How do you use your rank in a way that's going to positively impact those that you encounter? And, you know, you try your best to deliver on that.
Mm-hmm. You know, I always said when I thought about leadership, you know, the one thing, the default that always came to my mind and still pretty much does to this day is, you know, the Army's definition of leadership, which is, you know, essentially provide, you know, purpose, direction, and motivation for, you know, a common cause, you know, if you will, the mission, whatever that is. But, you know, I think they've since modified it a little bit or whatever, but that was the accepted, you know, the doctrinally accepted, you know, 770 or whatever the field manual was on leadership for the Army and the infantry. But really, you know, it also, most importantly, those things are all true: purpose, direction, motivation. But it's all about influence, right? I mean, that's what this is about: influencing, you know, the outcome of an activity. You know, whatever that is. It's a brigade mission, it's a platoon mission, it's a fill in the blank. You know, it's a business development thing. You know, it's this idea of influence, and I think that's you know. There's an art and a science to that as well. But on the topic of influence and on the topic of leadership, let me ask you, you know, you've been exposed to, you know, many leaders, more than I have, because your career, I ended up at 20, as you know, jokingly or cavalierly say 20 years and 20 minutes, and I was out. But you went on for how long?
33 and a half.
Well, so you got 13, you know, and a half more years of active federal service than I do, which is a ton more. God bless you. You've been exposed to you know, a lot more leaders than I ever was. But let me ask you, you know, and if you don't want to drop names, you don't have to do it. But, you know, people who had the most influence over your career. I mean, if you had to name two or three, you know, individuals at whatever level, maybe it was an NCO, you know, maybe it was a soldier, maybe it was a senior officer. I don't know. Who would those individuals be? And can you give me an example of a point in time where their influence, you know, what they did to influence the outcome of something or influence you? Could you give us an example of something that really sort of resonates with you to this day? You know?
Well, I would hesitate to name names, but I'll certainly identify some groups. And you know, I would say that you know, as I got ready to transition and retire from my uniform service, and you know, trying to think about how I want to tie a bow on that time, I was gathering my thoughts to put together a, you know, retirement ceremony, say a few words in front of the, you know, people, you know, friends, family, colleagues, and you know, you start to think about who you want to invite to that ceremony, and I many of those people that you're talking about, NCOs, officers that were bosses, superior officers, and peers too. I mean, you know, you among them. You know, so I think there's three different groups. There's those that work for you, who can teach you great lessons about leadership and can make you better because of the wise counsel that they provide. And and so, are we wise enough to allow it and be approachable, so that the people who work for us are willing to provide us that candid feedback? And then, are we willing to actually accept it and say, yeah, you know, you're right, platoon sergeant, you're right, first sergeant, you're right, sergeant major.
Yeah.
Like, thanks for bringing that up. And
thanks for having the guts, the candor, the whatever it took, the cojones to tell me that finger, that button that I got my finger on isn't a isn't a push to talk button, it's a release to listen, and you ought to use it sometime, sir. Cool.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So
that's a good point.
I was blessed with two great first sergeants in those 2 years of command in the 82nd. Kept in touch with both of them for years, and one of them was actually able to come to my retirement ceremony, at 20 years later.
Wow.
And each of them, in their own way, they were two different leaders, which required that I be a different commander as their battle buddy, and they each led in a different way, which allowed me, or required that as a team, I led a little differently, but each of them taught me some valuable lessons about small unit leadership and about dealing with people, solving problems, setting priorities, communicating clearly, and picking your battles. I mean, I can think of a number of lessons from those folks. So those are people who work for you, who can make you a better leader. Then I would offer that your peers are a powerful group, similar to the lesson or the example I gave about, you go to a college or grad school, or you go to a training course, there's the teachers, the faculty who provide the instruction that ultimately gives you some sort of certification and allows you to graduate from the class or get this degree or whatever it is. But then there's the other people in the room with you that are your classmates, teammates, and the learning experience is enhanced if you got good teammates who can just make that experience better. And all through my career, I was always blessed with, the Army's a great place where, as you said, there's just there were a lot of talented people, and I was always able to find a couple of great teammates that I could set my sights on or with
in every unit.
In every unit,
absolutely.
and then like you and I, we often were not. I don't think we were ever in the same unit, but we were in the same Army and often at the same place. And so we were able to, even though we weren't in the same unit, kind of share lessons learned, share observations, share thoughts about command at the company level, for example, share thoughts about, leadership lessons and things we were dealing with. And I feel like my peers absolutely, number one, made me better, but they also challenged me to get better myself, because I was looking to my left and right and saying, all right, well, that's the standard, and I got to move out. And then the last category, of course, would be the your bosses, the people whose job it is to make you better, the people whose job it is to train you to take their job one day, to identify for the Army who it is that is most worthy of moving to the next level. That's their job. And they have to have a bit of, it's not just about performance. It's as much about potential. It's not just about getting the job done. It's about connecting with those that he or she leads. And I was fortunate to have some great mentors in that space, many of whom I was thankful were able to come to my retirement ceremony, and I could probably say there were 5 to 10 who I would kind of put on that all-star list. Many of them I met, and we maintained a relationship over 10 years. And some, all of them I'm still in touch with today in one way or another. And each of them, kind of helped buff off some rough edges along the way.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned those 3 groups. That's really. I wouldn't have put it that way, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think you're absolutely right. You can learn. You learn very, very valuable lessons from the people that work for you, if you're in a leadership position, and then your peers. That's a huge group, and then of course your bosses. So the one thing about the peer group that I've always found fascinating, because I would tell you that I think, to me, I'm sure you did too. You mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, this idea of looking around and figuring out who's who in the zoo, and I would measure myself into this day, maybe not so much because, my peer group's a little bit fuzzy at this point, but when you're wearing a uniform and you're in the basic course, advanced course, in a company, in a battalion, fill in the blank, as an infantry officer, I don't think you can't help but measure yourself against your peer group. How did he do on his PT test? How did he do at the rifle range? How did his company do at this? How did his battalion do at that? What does his uniform look like? What's he got on it? What medals does he have, that I don't have? What opportunities, So we're always measuring ourselves, at least I was, by what other people were doing, because you're like, hey, if you want to be at the top, okay, of that, it's a very competitive place that we found ourselves, right, as infantry officers in the airborne ranger community. I mean, that's about as knuckle dragging, meat eating as you can get, and it's very competitive. And so when you're looking at the guys that are shining or outperforming, that's great motivation for everybody. At least it certainly was, for me. But the one thing about your peer group that's different about those other two groups, those that work for you and those that you work for, is that you can't fool your peer group. You can fool your subordinates, you can fool your bosses, but, and I say fool them by, like, hey, making something perhaps appear like something that it isn't. I don't know. I've never been a person that wanted to fool anybody. But you can't fool your peer group. Like, we know where you're strong. We know where your peer group knows where you're strong, and knows where you're weak, and especially in the small circles that we ran, that's the toughest crowd I've ever been part of, and I loved it. But I graduated, or I gravitated towards that peer group for a very important, for me, for a reason, because I wanted to be in that group. I wanted to have that kind of pressure. I wanted to be amongst people that were that good, or that were better than me. And that was a monster motivator for me personally. I don't know about your experience, but the peer group, our peer group, you're always looking around, like, how'd he do? Or what's he doing, sort of thing. And you could tell the top, 5-6% of us, whoever they were, that were really outperforming. And they're all shades of gray. Unless you were wearing a uniform and you were, there witnessing whatever it was, it would probably not be evident that person was better or did better at something than the other guy did. So anyway, I just always thought that was, I thought when you were talking about the three different, groups and influence and leadership, I think the peer group for me was probably the strongest or biggest influencer in my life or career, and certainly to my life. I don't have, we in the Army are talking about mentors. Your bosses are mentors, and playing the role of mentor, which you and I are familiar with, and we do it all the time. I'm sure, but I don't really have. You probably do, but I don't really have, like, mentors, like senior, 3- and 4-star dudes that I might call up and go, hey, sir, I need your advice on this, or what do you think about that? And that, I don't have that. I don't know. Do you have that?
Yeah, I do. And, some of those folks, and it's not about rank. I've got some folks who I declare mentors who retired after very successful careers, but didn't make general, but they were a boss of mine who,
Sure.
Was a formative influence on my,
That's true.
life.
I have that. I do have that.
So whether it's it
that's a
might
good
be
point.
an old friend of the family, or it might be an uncle, or, the sheriff from your old hometown who was instrumental in getting you to join the military, or whatever it is. Mentors come in. They don't necessarily have to all be former bosses. They could just be someone who you want to be like in some way, or whose wisdom and guidance you benefited from. But
actually,
back
I do have a few people like that.
To your point about peers, I think that's a great point, and it is the group most overlooked when you are looking for, how do I get better? How do I set my sights on where I want to be? you often think about what your boss thinks. That's generally the first thing. I don't know how am I doing. My boss seems happy. Oh, my boss, kind of chewed me out last week. Or I'm not in a good place. We always think about what our bosses think, and hopefully we have a good sense of where we are there. Next, we think about those that we lead, and hopefully we want to be respected, trusted, admired by those that we lead, and it's not an easy task, but like we also think about that. We don't always think about what our peers think of us, and I used to tell at various levels. I mean, I think the first place where it made sense, or where I remember having a conversation with a group was, as a brigade commander, when I was responsible to be the senior rater for majors. And so all the majors in the brigade got senior rated by me. And that meant that I was the boss's boss. Okay. They each had a boss who was a lieutenant colonel, and then me, who would ultimately be someone who contributed fairly significantly to writing their report card, their annual officer evaluation report. That was something that went in their file, and contributed to the strength of their file, and determined what their future might be. And I told that group, I said, okay, look, all of you, we used to have the ratings block checked, right? So, were you top third, middle third, bottom third? Were you what we used to call a one block? Were you, center mass? I mean, we had different flavors of it, but at some point, your boss, if you work at Home Depot, you got a boss, and that boss is responsible for some number of people. And at some point, his boss or her boss is going to ask her, hey, who's your number one? And if you work at Home Depot and your boss has 10 people who are like you, well, like, you ought to know where you fall in that group of 10. If you want to one day get a raise, or one day get a promotion, or one day be offered an opportunity that is typically offered to the top tier as opposed to the middle tier or the bottom tier. So you got to sort of know where you stand amongst your peers. But I would often tell this group of majors, I would say, hey, look, all of you think you deserve to be in the top third, but only 30% of you, 33% of you can be in the top third. Your wives or your significant others, and your mothers also think you deserve to be in the top third because they love you and they've known you for, your whole life, and they think you're wonderful. The reality is that, like, you all will help me determine who the top third actually is. So I want you to be good teammates. I want you to, be competitive with your teammates, but like actually figure out ways to make each other better as a group, and not be competitive to a fault. And I think, it's like being in first grade and it was raining outside, and the teacher took you into the lunchroom, which was set up like a basketball court, and said, okay, we can't go outside for recess, so we're going to play kickball. You remember kickball? Like the red little all-purpose
sitting right over there.
All-purpose ball, right? And so teacher
dodgeball, kickball.
Dodgeball, kickball. So she'd put the class up there on the half court line. Line everybody up, and she say, okay, John and Doug, you're the team captains. Pick your teams for kickball. And so, you and I would go on opposite sides, and we would start looking at the lineup, and we'd be like, okay, even though we were only in first grade, we knew we needed people who could kick, people who could catch, people who could throw, and people who wanted
the best one,
and people who could run. And so, after a couple games of kickball, you sort of kind of knew who the pentathletes were and who the people who weren't going to help your team win. And I'm like, hey, look, your job as a major in this brigade is to not be, is to be among the first picked off of that half court line, and not be the person, the people picked last, because you just, nobody wants you on their team. Now, that was all tied towards competence, hey, are you a good teammate? Are you the one who's basically like, yeah, hey, look, I did the homework assignment last night. We're all working on it. Like, here's what I came up with. And you freely offer it, and you let the, your peers benefit from the work that you've done, and you're sharing your, I think I got to that stage eventually, perhaps with some influence from some of my mentors saying, hey, look, the higher up you go, the more it is about how well you operate with your peers and what your peers think of you. It's less about, wanting to be the best company commander and maybe having some sharp elbows. And, it's more about how you can make your peers good. And, that's important. And I think it works inside and outside the military.
Yep.
If you're constantly thinking about how your peers view you and are you seen as a good team player, then you can't help but be someone that people want around.
Right. No, that's well said. Well said. Okay, so what are you doing now? I mean, you're retired. When did you retire? You retired?
So just over 2 years ago, like 2 years and a month.
So you got some business things you've been doing. You want to talk about any of that?
Yeah, so I'm doing a handful of things that keep me busy and allow me to do things that I enjoy. They currently cover a pretty broad spectrum, but I get a chance to I'm what they call I'm on the group or on the bench of folks that get to call themselves senior mentors with the Army, and so in that capacity, I get a chance to help continue to train our future leaders.
What's that called?
It's the Army Senior Mentor Program, and so in that capacity, there are lots of different ways to give back in that space, but I operate through the Army War College, and so I get a chance to mentor our newly selected one-star generals every year as a small group seminar leader, like Cleary was for us when we were captains.
You get to go actually go.
So we it's an annual activity that typically occurs in Washington D.C. for a week, and we bring the newly selected cohort.
Isn't that called a charm school?
They used to call it that back in the day, but now it's called something much fancier, like the Senior Leader Development Seminar or something like that. But yeah, we just get a chance to help newly selected generals who make that transition from indirect leadership as colonels to what the Army now requires of them as enterprise leaders. And
I've never heard that term. That must be a new buzz.
So
enterprise
you're steering,
leader.
you're helping the Army steer the ocean liner now. You're not down in the engine room anymore. You're not even responsible for a whole deck. You're like actually helping understand, how to help the Army steer the whole cruise ship. And this enterprise leadership means you got to be on a different plane for understanding big picture, big Army objectives and where the Army's trying to go and how you are contributing to help them achieve that vision. So I get a chance to do that, and then I also teach a course at each of our theater armies where it's called Theater Army Staff Officer Orientation. It's the Theater Army Staff Officer course for captains through colonels, and we go to each of the theater armies and help them understand the importance of a theater army. So I get a chance to give back to the Army in those two roles. That's maybe a month's worth of work a year. I do some corporate leader development with an organization called Thayer Leadership, and so we provide leader development experiences for Fortune 500 companies in all shapes and sizes. We help them achieve their leader development objectives.
How do they find you? I mean, like say I'm part of a Fortune 500 company. I mean, how do those? I mean, do they find, is it as a push-pull? How do those two entities get linked up?
Yeah, so most of that organization's business is called Thayer Leadership, and they basically just say, look, I'm looking for a leader development opportunity. I'm looking for something with, a lot of folks rely on military background and experience to help establish some leadership values and teach some principles and tools that could be useful in corporate America. And so they look to, whatever it is they may search for. Most of Thayer's opportunities, they come to them and they just say, okay, now we found you. Now let's help develop a program. And so that I spend a good bit of time doing that. Then I do some consulting for a number of small, medium, and large companies to help connect them with the Army in most cases. I do some executive coaching for a couple different organizations, just helping mentor folks who might be presented with a new leadership challenge, or maybe they've been promoted and they're just trying to grow into their new position. And then I work at an outdoor gear store, and
I love that.
you know,
You're a gear freak like the rest
I've
of
been
us.
I've been a gear nut for since I was about 12, and I enjoy the outdoors. You and I enjoy the outdoors together, and the outdoors is more fun if you have the right gear. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. And I'm just Doug when I'm there, and that's kind of like my golf course.
Cool.
And I go there and I sell sleeping bags and tents and stoves and
I got a question for you,
and,
man, on gear.
Yeah.
I've been in the one thing I've experimented, with lots of different, gear. Obviously, I spent most of my life been outside, but the one piece of gear that I'm missing is a good lightweight, weatherproof, rainproof, and I gotta say it's got to be Gore-Tex, right? I mean, I don't know if there's another, if there's any other material out there that repels water, but here in Florida, and I've learned this even at Camp Hackett or other places throughout the world, wherever I've gone to do my thing, a good outer shell, that's got a hood on it, that's made really well. Got to have good zippers on it. It's got to be quiet. That's the other thing. I mean, because I might, and camouflaged, too, right? I mean, it would be great if they offered it in something other than camouflage too. And I know they're out there. I just don't really I don't have one right now, and I have never really had one that I liked a lot. Like the Army's Gore-Tex, that lightweight Gore-Tex, that thing just, at least the one I had, it didn't keep you dry. I can tell you that. So I'm just curious, do you have or is anybody out there making something like that, like lightweight and breathable and like waterproof? Is there anything out there like that for a jacket?
Certainly there is.
Really?
I mean, good gear comes at a cost, and the more bells and whistles and features that you want. It is sometimes just like buying a car or truck that it is the be all and end all, and you can use it for every possible thing you need the ideal vehicle for.
Right.
Like you might need more than one jacket. You might need two.
Yeah.
One that kind of is the camouflage, quiet, waterproof, breathable one that meets those needs, and then one that's the waterproof, breathable, but not camouflage and maybe not quiet, that you could use on the boat or around town or whatever. So there might be two, but does exist. Gore-Tex is still the industry leading fabric and waterproof, but also breathable. There are other Gore-Tex like fabrics that are almost as good and comparable, maybe a little bit less money. But yeah, they're out there, and we can talk about that offline.
Let's do that. Yeah, that's the one piece of gear that, because like you say, I mean,
it's tough to have too many jackets, though. That's what I tell. That's what I tell everybody who comes into this shop.
The problem is, like, if you ask me, like, you can go online and you can see like thousands of brand names that are out there, okay, that say that this does this, that, and the other thing. Problem is today, like, if you're I mean, I'm not very tall. I'm built more like a fire hydrant than I am anything else. So something that fits well, okay, and has those properties is like 1 in a million for a guy like me. It's just, and then the other thing is, if I want to wear it like up in, where it's cold, where it might be below freezing, this thing, it don't want it to have any insulated properties. I just want it to keep me dry, and I want it to be quiet, and I want it to have enough room in it so that I can wear a couple of layers of something, So I don't know. I just feel like I'm always in this, perpetual mode of finding that piece of gear that I don't have. But it's the one thing that's my Achilles heel right now in terms of gear. But anyway, so we've talked a lot about a lot of things here, Doug. is there anything on your mind that you'd like to share with us that we haven't talked about?
Well, I would just, as we sort of tie this conversation back to your foundation, which, for those who might be listening who might not be aware, I mean, John retired at about the 20-year point, like you said, and said, you know what, I'm gonna establish this foundation that takes care of our nation's combat wounded Purple Heart recipients and provides them a unique and special opportunity that that they can't get anywhere else. And I've been along this journey with him since the beginning, and I've listened to him talk about it. We've talked about it over the years, and I've watched it grow to what it is today, which is really a remarkable foundation, which has served many, I mean, literally hundreds over the last over a decade. But one of its strengths, perhaps its primary strengths and its uniqueness, is that it connects a group of people, former soldiers, Marines, men and women who have served our nation and fought for democracy, whether it was ours or someone else's, and were combat wounded, and therefore were part of something larger than themselves. They were part of a team of a brotherhood, sisterhood, that was a unit that went and did something important on behalf of our nation, and experienced that in a positive way. And then, were wounded in some capacity. And as part of that healing process, the foundation is particularly useful and helpful to provide these world-class outdoor sporting events for our nation's combat wounded, and allow them to connect again with like-minded individuals who have a similar background, who come together for a shared passion for the outdoors, and get a chance to have that positive experience. And it's changed the lives of everybody that has been fortunate enough to benefit from one of their events. And I would submit, John, that that's part of what has fueled our relationship, right? We met because of our shared passion for being infantrymen and young captains that were just out there trying to be the best that we possibly could be. And we were watching our peers, and we enjoyed the team that we were on, and we enjoyed the challenge, and we were looking for the next one. And that fueled our relationship initially. Then we realized that we both also had a shared passion for the outdoors, and you turned that passion into what is now the foundation. And we get a chance to continue to work together, making that foundation into, what it's going to be next year.
Yeah.
So, I just as a way to kind of say, we've been hanging out, telling stories, and enjoying each other's company for, what did we decide? It was 32 years. So
long time.
But the foundation is, what an incredible byproduct of John's passion for service and our nation, but for outdoor sporting as well, and kind of brings all that together.
Yeah. Well, appreciate the kind words, Doug. Yeah. I've said this before. I think that, I guess, going back to the genesis of all of it, but, we don't have to rehack much of that. But I would say, and I reckon you probably have some of the same, feelings, but like you just showed me some pictures of your camp when you were, hunting in Virginia in the hills of, of Virginia, deer hunting. Yeah, here's your camp. There's a tent and a fire, and it's dark. It's just you, your little stove. You got a little table in your tent, and you're deer hunting. But you did that. I'm assuming that was a solo mission, right?
Right, because you didn't come with me.
I did not come with you. I was invited, and I didn't go last fall. Correct. we can talk about that.
But you've been with me on other occasions.
Oh, yes, I have. We have. But my point is this, that you did that as a solo activity, although I probably should have been there with you. I admit that. But point is, you did it as a solo activity, which is how I do probably, other than, with my boys and the events that we do for the foundation. I most particularly enjoy doing those things alone. I actually like and prefer, to do a lot of my outdoor sporting activities alone. Not all of them, okay? And I love sharing the experience as well with heroes and family and friends. I genuinely do. But I love to do it most like alone. If you were to say, what one thing would I, if you just had, another day to do something, in the outdoor sporting arena, and that was going to be your last thing, what would you do? Well, to me, that's an easy answer. I would go, I would go trapping. I would go up to Camp Hackett and I would set up a trap line, and that's a solo activity. And I could talk about that for days. But at the end of the day, why? I say, why is that? Well, not why is it just do I like doing it solo, but it's what it does for me inside inside of me, to be outdoors amongst them, as we like to say, the critters, the animals, the great, with all the things that you see, the things that you hear, the things that you experience, all of that just dials me right in and grounds me, humbles me, makes me whole. Just does so much for me, like inside of me. Can't really, I'm not even doing a good job of describing it, but that's what I have. That's the feeling that I have when I go do it. And whatever that might be, whether it's out here in the Bay, here in Tampa Bay or up at Camp Hackett or wherever it might be, there's something to that for me. And I just figured that there might be something to that for others, and to be able to share that now broadly with people that I don't know, 95% of whom are greater I'll never meet. I think last year we reported 32 missions. No, I'm sorry, 42 missions in like 35 different states, serving, 202, I think it was, combat wounded Purple Heart recipients on those missions. I get to see it on Facebook and social media, but I'll never meet those guys. But I just look at their smiles, and I read their testimonials. And, I just feel like probably the most blessed guy in the world to be a small part of that, to be somebody who helped, make that happen or facilitated that, and that's it, and I would imagine you have that same. That's why when you showed me those pictures of your tent, your camp, and I was like, wow, he did that solo. And I got a huge amount of respect for that. But I mean, you go out in the woods, well, what does it do for you? I mean, why are you drawn to that?
Yeah, I look to each fall in the deer stand as an annual centering activity for me.
Yeah.
People talk about zeroing their moral compass. It's not so much about moral compass. To me, it's just sort of a zeroing activity, centering activity that sort of, I get some of my, best thinking done,
Yeah.
15 feet above the ground,
Yeah.
not seeing anything,
Yeah.
or, enjoying watching the sun come up,
Yeah.
and kind of reflecting on, hey, where am I? How was this year? How,
Yeah.
what's next? What key milestones are out there? What do I want to do over the course of the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is? I get, I look forward to that opportunity each year. I've gotten back into hiking, backpacking a little bit more, since retirement. And in fact, spent the first 30 days of my transition leave logging several hundred miles on the Appalachian Trail, and did that solo, and I walked the whole North Carolina Tennessee border by myself for about 3 weeks. And it's not that you don't see other people, not
Yeah.
that you don't meet others, but to me it's very much a it's you against nature, or you with nature, kind of being part of it. Whatever it throws at you, whatever Mother Nature throws at you, you got to deal with weather, challenges, terrain, and you got to overcome that. And I just like that challenge. I like that personal sense of accomplishment. I like being able to go out and feel confident and competent to exist, survive, and thrive in the outdoors with my knowledge, with my experience, with my gear. There's, weather, conditions, circumstances. I like that challenge. And I think that's part of what makes the outdoor sporting events that the foundation puts on, so constructive for the heroes.
Yeah, we're in the process of we've been doing it for 2 years. We're not done yet. We had a survey, with the support of Cornell University that we're doing, and asking these the participants, the combat wounded who attend our events, a series of questions, asking them to reflect on how they felt before the event and after the event, sort of thing, to kind of get some metrics on what we're doing and quantitatively what it's doing for them, for the heroes that we're serving. And a couple of the questions were on or are on self-reliance and self-esteem. And it's interesting. We haven't fully disclosed what the survey says. We need to get I think like 50 more to get to 300 respondents to make it scientifically more concrete, I guess, is what the scientists are telling us. But anyway, it's interesting because what they tell us, like, for example, contrasting, and I'll get to what they say about self-reliance and self-esteem and our activities. And we'll obviously publish a report when this is all done. But when we ask a question about connectedness to other veterans, and I want to say like 80%, I think it's 79%, say that they feel greater connections to veterans after one of our events. And to me, that's kind of like a no-brainer. Of course, we would expect that, right? They're on an event with other combat wounded, they're doing a world-class sporting activity. We would expect them at the end of that mission to feel more connected. Like, I guess it could have felt less. It is a possible outcome that they feel less or about the same. But when you ask them about self-reliance or self-esteem, the response we're getting is about 50% that they feel more self-reliant or their self-esteem is improved. And I'm wondering, why that is. Why is that not as high as the question of connectedness to veterans? And we'll get there, and maybe understand, as we study the data, it's still pretty good. 1 out of 2 people saying they feel better about themselves, or they feel that they can rely on themselves more after, one of our activities. Dr. Keith Tidball from Cornell, when he and I were chatting about this, he said, well, it's interesting because most people that join the military, by and large, are more self-reliant than the average person out there. They and then the military it improves that condition, to be self-reliant, but there's something to that. And I think when I go out there and do things by myself, like, there's no help coming when you're at Camp Hackett. Like, if something bad happens when I'm out there in my trap line in the middle of nowhere,
they might not find you till spring.
Exactly. Right. And if I'm still there, I mean, I would imagine that the critters would probably might be some of your fabric, your fancy Gore-Tex might be there. But yeah, that's, to me, that's a big deal. I don't know why that is, but I share your same sense there. I mean, it's a really important thing for me to do. like an annual thing where I'm up there or someplace doing something, by myself, because there's no one coming. If it didn't turn out well, then you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. And see, I like to put myself in those positions. I don't know why. I don't make bad decisions. I try not to make, but sometimes I do. I mean, I get myself sometimes in a position that I shouldn't be in, or I later look back on it and go, hey, dumbass, don't do that again, okay? Because you were about that close on that one. Please don't do that again. But I don't know why. I just enjoy that aspect of it a lot. And it's not, to me, it's not about harvesting, an animal per se, although I'm usually chasing something. And it's great, when I am successful at doing that. It's just not necessary, to make that to close that loop for me. But anyway, well, we've been at it for a while here. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for what you've done for our country, what you've done for the foundation. What you've done for all those whose lives you've touched while they were wearing a uniform, and what you've done for me personally. As a friend. You're a great American. I respect you a great deal, and I really enjoy your company, and I appreciate you taking the time to come here and chat with us and share some of your experiences to our listening audience. I appreciate that, Doug.
Well, likewise, it's been my pleasure. And, everybody's probably got that short list of people that if they get in a bind, maybe it's not out laying traps, trap line up in Wisconsin, but if they get in a bind or they just need, somebody to talk to, they got that short list of people who know them well enough inside and out and have, been around long enough where, they're going to, that phone call, that conversation, or that, 911 call, they know that they're gonna get a response. And you're certainly on that short list for me and have been for a long time. And so the respect, the trust, the admiration, it's mutual. And it's great to be down here in Apollo Beach at the home or the headquarters of the foundation, catching up, and great sharing time with you today.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go grab some dinner here, and maybe a little brown water nightcap or something like that. But for all you folks out there listening, we appreciate your time. This is the Honor, Connect, Heal podcast with the WWIA. Appreciate you tuning in. Have a great day.
To learn more about the mission of the Wounded Warriors in Action Foundation and how you can get involved, please visit our website at wwiaf.org or follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you for listening to the WWIA podcast and for helping us honor, connect, and heal our combat wounded Purple Heart heroes through the power of the great outdoors.
If you like what you're listening to here and would like to join our team in our mission to bring healing power and recovery to America's Purple Heart heroes, please become part of our Sponsor a Hero team by clicking on the link in the podcast notes or by going to wwiaf.org/sponsor. That's wwiaf.org/sponsor. Our heroes need you now more than ever. Thank you.